Welcome to the Mindful Paws Podcast, where we talk about all things mental health and service dogs. We will also explore that powerful connection between mental health and service dogs. I'm your host, Laura Mudge, a passionate advocate and handler of a small service dog who's been by my side offering me life-saving support through some of the most challenging moments of my life. While I'm not a medical professional, I've experienced firsthand the impact that service dogs can have on mental health. And this podcast is a space for sharing stories, insights, and resources that help us understand the incredible ways that these animals can assist those of us with mental health conditions. Through conversation with experts, service dog handlers, and mental health advocates, we'll explore the unique bond between humans and their service dogs, and how these animals provide both emotional and practical support. I'm excited to dive into these stories with you, and I hope you leave each episode with a better understanding of the healing powers of our four-legged friends. Today on the Mindful Paws Podcast, we're joined by Luke Wendover from Wendover Service Dogs and Living Skies Canine Rescue. Luke has a vast knowledge when it comes to working with service dogs, and he's an advocate for service dog handlers and our four-legged friends alike. Please welcome Luke to the show. Hi, Luke.
Hi, thanks for having me, Laura.
Thank you for being our first podcast. It's pretty amazing.
It's very exciting.
It is. Can you start maybe by sharing your journey on how you started working with service dogs?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started Wendover Service Dogs because I actually needed a service dog of my own shortly after I turned 18. I'd been diagnosed with autism about 6 months prior. And so I started applying for some of the big programs that provide autism support dogs. And I was denied from every single one I applied to because they only place dogs with children.
Wow.
And it just, I remember being very frustrated about it because, I still am, if I'm being honest. It's not like autism just goes away when you turn 18.
Exactly.
So after that, I tried applying to some of the PTSD groups as I had been diagnosed with PTSD and CPTSD from a young age. And I was then told that they wouldn't place a dog with me unless I was a first responder.
Or a veteran. That's it.
Yeah. So
I had the same difficulty. Yeah.
It was infuriating. So, I was annoyed, but I wasn't deterred. So I chose to pursue a different path. I had fractured 2 vertebrae in my back around the same time I was diagnosed with autism. And I struggled with joint problems my entire life due to undiagnosed Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which of course is now diagnosed. So I started to look into mobility dogs, and I discovered that unless I wanted to pay upwards of $30,000 for one, I was looking at a 5 to 7 year wait list.
Wow.
So being as stubborn as I am, I decided to just train my own dog.
Yep.
So I had quite a bit of experience training dogs, mostly neighbors and friends. Training a service dog was an entirely different ordeal. Thankfully, I found that it came quite naturally to me. I had a lot of background in training horses for people. And so I quickly made many friends within the service dog community. Friends and family members started asking if I could train their dogs to be service dogs. And so I said I would try. At this time, I was also offering pet training for dogs and dipped my toes into reactivity and aggression cases, which I think really helped me with shape my understanding of dog psychology and where some of the behaviors we see comes from, which really helped with training service dogs because I was able to pinpoint things and fix them before they ever became an issue. And then a few years into running Wendover Canine, which was my pet training business, and helping train service dogs on the side, I realized that I really preferred training service dogs. And so I switched to Wendover Service Dogs full time. And, now it's my career and I absolutely love doing it. So we have a variety of different options, but I'm pleased I did. I do miss working with pets, but I mean, realistically, my passion lies with service dogs.
Yeah. And I really appreciate it because when I was going on my journey with my little marbles, even people who train service dogs, because small service dogs aren't necessarily, I would say they're pretty well, not super well known yet. And that they can still do jobs like medical alert and some PTSD work, which is what Marbles does. So it was really nice to find you because even I went through the rejection of not just having the, I'm not a first responder, I'm not a veteran, I don't qualify for any programs. PTSD happens not just in those two circumstances.
Well, exactly. It's
especially complex PTSD, right? Sorry?
It's not post-traumatic soldier disorder. Like,
No, it's not. Exactly. So it needs to be like, it's great. So I really appreciated finding you because you really helped me kind of like build the confidence to work with Marbles and work and train with her. And so schools like you, it's super, super important. So I'm glad that the journey happened for you, for sure.
yes.
Maybe we can talk about some of the tasks that can help people with mental health conditions. And it doesn't just have to be PTSD. It could be anything else as well.
So like some of the biggest tasks we use are honestly direct pressure therapy. It helps regulate the central nervous system. And well, that's harder to do with small dogs. They tend to do light pressure therapy instead of direct. I find that, for autism, for PTSD, for anxiety, for panic disorders, it really helps because it helps calm the handler down.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other tasks are grounding, like grounding something that I teach every single dog. And it can simply be a cold nose booping someone's hand.
Yeah.
And that's enough to kind of snap someone back to reality. Tactile stimulation is a big one as well. Just being there if someone's panicking and being able to feel the fur and, really putting the dog's head up into the person's hand.
Yeah.
Crowd control is a huge one, especially with anxiety and PTSD. Being able to circle the handler and just create some space or alert the handler if someone's coming up behind them.
Yeah.
And then another one that we use a lot is self-harm interruption.
Yes.
A lot of people with PTSD and anxiety will find that they pick at themselves or they scratch, which I'm guilty of myself. I will just scratch and not realize I'm scratching and end up with giant wounds. Mm-hmm. And so my dogs are trained to, if they see me scratching, which it's a great task, but it has its downsides.
It's annoying when you want to do it.
Come and interrupt. And then, when I have an actual itch, it's like, oh man, like I got to put you in a whole different room just so I can scratch my leg.
Yeah, I know. It's it is kind of like that. I've noticed that with my dog too. Like if I am doing something physical, because she really listens to my breathing and can tell if I'm holding my breath. So if I've just done something physical and then I go back up to her while she's in her down state, she will like jump up and alert because she thinks like I'm holding my breath and I'm panicking. Exactly. And for her, because she's little, she just kind of sits up on here and her heart and her breathing against me really helps. So she does that for nightmare interruption. She'll come lay on my chest. And then I've had probably 3 times now she's saved my life because I've had such bad panic attacks where I've gone down a really dark road over the past couple of years. And she's been there for me in those moments and come right in and start licking me and just like pulling me back out and grounding me and just kind of letting me know that she's there. And those are those kind of things that you're talking about. And for a little dog, it looks differently. I mean, we were just out at the store and she let me know that there was some like creepy person coming up behind me. So that was helpful, that kind of thing. Yeah. You've had service dogs and I know currently you're kind of you're training a new one. And I just wanted to ask, like, what impact does that have on your life? Like, what have you found really helped while having a service dog?
So because I use multi-purpose dogs, one of the biggest things for me is item retrieval. So I have postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And so if I change my posture, my position, my heart rate likes to do weird things.
Ooh.
So picking things up off the ground, bending down to pick something up and then standing up, my heart rate will just skyrocket. And when my heart rate skyrockets, my blood pressure tanks. And then I'm prone to passing out. And when I pass out because of my joint condition, I'm prone to dislocating things. And it's just a mess. It's just a mess. It's chaotic and it's awful. So training my dogs to, if I drop something or I ask them to pick something up, they're able to go get that and hand it to me is huge for me. As well as, direct pressure therapy. I use that one a lot, especially with the autism. I use the self-harm interruption. I use crowd control. I use grounding tasks. One of the big ones that my next service dog is going to be trained for is to go get Papa. So he's going to go get my spouse when I'm having a mental health episode so that he can go get Ollie and be like, hey, something's wrong. Like Timmy's fallen down the well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. So he'll go get Ollie and Ollie will be able to come and be like, okay, what's going on? How can I help? Do you need the light off? Do you need a blanket? Do you need tea? Like what would help here? And the other thing is that I quite often, once a dog is past its OFA examinations and certifications and all that fun x-rays and cardiac
All those
exams that
things.
I do with my dogs, is that they're cleared for mobility. So I have bigger breeds as my service dogs so that I can have them brace to help me get up out of chairs or up off the ground.
Perfect.
We're also looking at training Baloo to pull my socks on and off and pull my pants off for me because, again, bending down. It's not great.
It's not great, but that's also fun for the dog. I mean, you just don't want him doing it when you're out shopping or something.
Well, exactly. But I mean, everything should be a game for them, right? Like, any type of task work should be a game.
Yeah, if the dog's right. Yeah, if it's right for the dog, it's fun, right? Like, and they want to do it. They love it. Yeah, my dog gets so excited when I get her vest on. Like, I go to get the vest, and she's just like, "Oh my gosh, you're so excited!" Like, more than for a walk
because it's a fun thing for them. If we don't make it a negative experience, they don't view it negatively.
What about misconceptions when it comes to like psychiatric service dogs, ones that are dealing with mental health? Because I often run into, she's an emotional support dog.
Yeah. And that's the big one. Like, that is the biggest one that comes to mind for me, is that they're just emotional support dogs. And I mean, for those who are listening and not watching, there are air quotes around that. There's a big difference between ESAs and service dogs. And like, that difference is that service dogs are task trained. They're task trained to mitigate their handlers' disabilities. And ESAs don't actually require any training. It doesn't mean that they're not valuable and that people don't need them.
Exactly.
But they don't require the training that it takes to be able to go in public. So I've had many, many people approach me asking if I can train an ESA for them. And, I'd say, 9 out of 10 times I chat with them and I find out they don't actually need an ESA. Mm-hmm. They need a psychiatric service dog, and they're just not aware of what the differences are.
Yeah.
So, and I'm 100% sure that there are people out there who don't need a psychiatric service dog and do benefit from an at-home ESA. But the reality is that in order to have an ESA, you're required to have a disability. Why not just train it to be a service dog at the same time? Like, yes, it's also a pet. Your dog can also be an ESA that's a pet.
Yeah.
But in the same breath, why not train your dog to do psychiatric tasks?
Yeah, exactly. It just, it makes a lot of sense, because then you can take it, it opens up the public access world.
Exactly. As long as the dog has the temperament to do public access.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. I was about to say, like, yeah, there's a big difference between the temperament. Like, I've even run into a few therapy dogs and they don't have the same temperament as my dog does, because a therapy dog, again, is another difference where, that dog is put into place to like go visit people and be the tactile kind of like love on me situation, because we all know that's great for serotonin.
Yeah.
But it's not a service dog where, Marbles today, even just going down to Walmart, there's like people on carts, there's, giant things full of boxes and things moving. Pallets.
Halloween's coming up.
Yes. Halloween is coming out. So you go in there, they've got like scary things. Sorry, I made a scary face for everyone listening. It was really scary, I'm sure. Yeah. And, they have to be able to like deal with that. And I mean, as your dog is learning, she's still kind of like on the cusp of like becoming fully certified. So like, if it's one little like, ooh, I'm not sure, then you just work through it. But it's a different kind of thing. Like a regular dog would freak out,
Exactly. There's so much training that goes into it.
Yeah. What do you think we could do? Like, I mean, the reason why I started this podcast is part of this. What can we do to break the stigma about service dogs with mental health work? Because that's really part of the reason why I'm doing this podcast.
Mm-hmm. So the big thing for me is that, 1 in 5 Canadians, because we're Canadian, 1 in 5 Canadians struggles with mental health. Mm-hmm. And probably more than that, because there's probably people who aren't admitting it.
Oh, there's lots.
People don't realize that anxiety is a disability.
Yeah.
So the more psychiatric service dogs that people see out in public, the more that the public will realize that perhaps mental health issues are a lot more prominent than they realize.
Yes, exactly.
And so it creates this beautiful circle of, one of those 1 in 5 goes out going, mm-hmm. Oh, I'm so alone in the world. Because realistically, that's a big thing that psychiatric service dogs do, is they make their handler feel not so alone.
Exactly.
So this one person who doesn't have a service dog goes out and they see a dog that's labeled as a psychiatric service dog and they go, oh, that person is struggling with their mental health too. Maybe I'm not alone in this world. And then they
Yeah.
go home, they do some research and they realize that, maybe I'd benefit from a psychiatric service dog, or they tell someone else about it. And that person goes, maybe I'd benefit. They get a psychiatric service dog. And then it starts the whole cycle over. They're seen in public by one of those 1 in 5 people.
Exactly. So then it's like, it's help spreading awareness as we're doing our work, which is awesome. Why don't you talk a little bit about like when the Living Skies Rescue and Wendover Service Dogs, like a little bit more about what you do?
So Wendover Service Dogs, we originally started out as an owner trained program. So we, as you know, we help people train their own dogs to be service dogs. And we do that at a very reduced cost compared to what program dogs are. I admittedly recently moved 2,000 kilometers away from everyone I've ever known, which, partly in turn is thanks to having access to service dogs for myself through the years. Because, a decade ago, I wouldn't have been able to do that. But due to living very rurally in Saskatchewan, of all places, I don't do in-person lessons with people anymore. Everything is over Zoom or Google Meet. We do a lot of phone calls, a lot of video calls for the owner trained program. And we're looking at getting an online program up where people can kind of do it self-paced and reach out to us for help when they need it. But we're also looking at, we are training program dogs that, they're brought in. We raise them, they do all the training with us, and then they're placed with someone who needs a dog. And, I admittedly am one of those programs that bothered me so much 10 years ago that charges $30,000 for a fully trained dog. But the difference is that we don't discriminate on whether or not you are a first responder or a veteran.
Yeah.
We don't discriminate on age. If you're 36 years old and you have autism, you qualify for an autism service dog. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And we also do multi-purpose training, which a lot of programs don't do. A lot of programs no, we can only train the dog to do hearing alert. We can only train the dog to do epileptic response. We can only train the dog to do diabetic alert. And I'm sitting here with, I've got a binder of disabilities.
Yeah.
So I have people message and they're like, I need a dog that can do hearing alerts, that can do medication retrieval, that can do guide work. We don't do guide work. I send them somewhere else for guide work.
Yeah.
That's a whole different section.
Guide is the whole thing. Yeah.
It's a whole thing, but they require multiple things from their dog.
Mm-hmm.
And my response is always, it's going to take finding the right dog, but we can do it. Not all dogs are able to be multi-purpose service dogs. Not all dogs are able to, be trained for multiple things. Some dogs hate doing scent work, and I'm not going to force a dog that hates to do scent work to be a diabetic alert dog or, a gluten detection dog. It would be a miserable dog. It would be like me being in a corporate job. It doesn't work.
It's like Marbles trying to do mobility and she's like 5 pounds. She's not going to help me off a chair. She can go get me some things, but they're small.
Exactly.
She's not going to bring me a bottle of water because it weighs the same as she does.
She could be trained to go get someone to help you get off the chair.
And that's what she's done. That's what she's done. She goes to get people for me all the time. So, but that's the thing, right? I'm not going to train a small dog to do something like that, or I'm not going to train a dog who doesn't enjoy a certain type of work to do it.
We're really big on that. So we recently had a dog that was in for training with us and he was doing really well for the first 5 months. He got all those basics down. He started on public access and then he just suddenly started saying no. He didn't want to be involved in training. He definitely didn't want to do gluten alert, which was his big thing, was gluten alert and psychiatric. He would walk away. And I sat there and I tried for a couple of weeks to see if I could maybe get him going in it. Mm-hmm. And, this is someone who's paying me monthly to train this dog. And I ended up having to call them and being like, hey, he's not going to work out. So we need to look at options here. We can restart with a new puppy and find him a home because he's not service dog material. He's not enjoying it. And I'm not going to force him to. Yeah. Or, he can come and live with you as a pet. And we can still train a new dog for you, but either way, he's not an option anymore. That option's not there. Yeah. He hates this. It was so clear that this dog was saying no.
Yeah. It was just no.
He had all the foundations. It's not like he was lacking in foundations. He just didn't enjoy it. So they chose to have him go to a new home. He went to a new home where he's a lovely pet for an elderly couple and they adore him. And then we went and got a new puppy for them. And that puppy is now at home with them. They're doing the owner train program, doing that option. And their dog is doing fantastic.
That's
she's
awesome.
a border collie and she loves the work and she enjoys everything about it.
Yeah. So it's all about the right fit, right?
Yeah.
So when I started with you, I think it was literally the first time that you met me and my dog. We walked into Winners and I think like 5 people tried to touch my dog.
Yeah.
And we're barking at her and all these things.
Yep.
So you gave me some really good advice and really talked to me about how to stand up for myself. And I can never thank you enough for that. But what would you tell other new service dog handlers?
Take it slow. Don't rush. Be assertive. No is a complete sentence. Nobody has a right to your medical information. I mean, obviously it would help if you tell your trainer what your disabilities, how they affect you.
Yeah.
No one has a right to know that in public. No one has a right to know anything about why you have a service dog, what your dog does, or what disabilities you have. It's rude. But the issue is that the public doesn't realize that. So no is a complete sentence. You can just say no and walk away. You're not obligated to interact with people. And I think I told you this as well. People who were assigned female at birth are often raised in a culture where they feel like they are obligated to interact with someone who's interacting with them.
Okay.
And that's a problem, especially as a service dog handler, because it's always old white men. It's always old white men like to come up and be like, well, what's it for? What's the dog do? What's wrong with you? And you start to panic because like people don't ask these questions. That's not like no one in their right mind walks up to someone and goes, what's wrong with you? No one does that.
If you had a wheelchair, this is what I it always blows my mind. Like if I was in a wheelchair and it was like a visible like tool to help me with a disability, no one would come up to me and go, why are you in a wheelchair?
Exactly. And as an ambulatory wheelchair user, that doesn't happen to me.
Yeah.
I mean, people admittedly give me some strange looks when I'm out in Walmart and I stand up out of my wheelchair to grab something from the top shelf.
Which is crazy.
It is what it is. But no, the big thing is just to repeat, no. Can I pet the dog? No.
Mm-mm.
Can I know your disability? No. Is it a service dog? Yes. That's a yes.
Yeah, that one you have to say yes to. Yeah. I literally have it like it's on autopilot. Someone will say, oh, cute doggy. And I'll say, she's working. Like, I don't even let it get past cute doggy. It's the tone. I can tell it's coming. Can I pet your dog?
With a look.
It's a look and a tone. Sometimes it's like, oh, cute doggy. And I'm like, oh, thank you, because I can tell. But there's this tone that happens. Or like today she got barked at. We were in Walmart shopping and this old white man barked at her and went, woof, woof, woof. And I'm just like, would you bark at a wheelchair? I don't know. What?
I've started barking back at people.
You started barking back at people?
I've started barking back at people.
Yeah.
Because, especially with having puppies in training,
I
don't want my dog to think that strangers are scary.
Exactly.
So if an old man, it's always an old white man.
It's always an old, I don't know. I agree.
But if an old white man comes up and goes, burr, 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 I just go back and I bark louder at him because then my dog's like, oh, this is a completely normal human interaction. Got it.
They always
bark. And my
bark.
dog gets a ton of cookies. So I just started barking back. And then, of course, the guy who's barked at my dog, who is clearly the crazy one here, thinks I'm nuts.
Yeah.
And then he leaves me alone due to it. So it works out.
Marbles has developed a disapproving look. So when it happened today, she just kind of looked back up at me and she went like, what the heck? Like, she's just like, why is he barking at me?
I'm hoping like with my service dog in training, he's a Mastiff.
Yeah.
He's going to be 150 pounds.
Oh, he's good.
I know I'm going to get the, oh, where's his saddle comment. I mean, I even got that with my 50-pound poodle, but I know I'm going to get the comments, and I'm really hoping that he is big enough that people are just like, maybe I don't really want to go say hi to this one.
Yeah, totally. I don't really want to go do that at all. What role do you think that small service dogs actually play in mental health?
So personally, I've never had a small service dog, but I've trained quite a few of them.
Yeah.
We have a Jack Russell that's placed in the UK, and he's lovely. And I think you I don't think you've met Betty, but we have Betty, who's a Yorkshire Terrier. And then, of course, Marbles helped you with Marbles. And I think one of the main advantages would be that they're able to be picked up easily. Because, for me, I want my dogs to snuggle me. That brings me a lot of comfort, being able to snuggle my dog. And again, my service dog in training is going to be 150 pounds. I cannot pick that dog up and snuggle him. There's not a chance. He's probably going to squish me trying to do DPT, in all honesty. But, one of the disadvantages is that they're not as easily seen, but it can also be an advantage. That one's a double-edged sword.
It is.
Disadvantage in the sense that, when there's shopping carts around and people are walking in stores, they're not looking at the ground. They don't see the dog.
Yeah.
But it also means that in restaurants, people don't see the dog and you don't get the comments because the dog is under the table where they can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
And, the other one is disadvantage is that a lot of people don't realize small dogs can be service dogs. And that is just simply a lack of education. Yeah. Any breed other than, a wolf hybrid, coyote hybrid, fox can be a service dog. It's just a matter of whether or not the dog has the right temperament. And I've met many small dogs that have fantastic temperaments for service work.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you said there. I find too, like if I'm out and I'm feeling anxious, I wear like a cross body bag and like it's a giant fanny pack, and literally my dog can sit right here, snuggle into my neck. I have work hands free. She's totally comfortable. She's just chill. And then because I was doing work in stage work, I could just put her under a desk. Mm-hmm. No one knew, like all the commotion going on, and nobody knew, there's a concert happening and she's literally behind the desk while I'm mixing. So,
well, and I often recommend small breeds to people who need diabetic alert.
Yes.
Because the dogs need to smell your breath most of the time. Mm-hmm. That's what we, anyways, there are some dogs that can just smell your body, but we train a breath scent. That's what we train. They are trained to scent alert to your breath. And so having a Chihuahua or a Yorkie that's right here and can just be carried around and, you're breathing right there. So that dog gets the smell every time you breathe. And then the minute it changes to go, hey, something's different. Hello. Yeah. And you're just like, oh, look, an instant alert.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect. Yeah. Yeah. So there's benefits to big dogs and little dogs. Like big dogs are great for what you were saying, like mobility wise and like, helping you off the ground, and things like that. And also for protection. Like I've run into a bunch of people on different groups online, and they were talking about, just having the presence of like a German Shepherd beside you for your PTSD. If you were someone who was like physically attacked, it really kind of helps you stay calm and feel
better, even if the dog isn't trained for protection work. Because
exactly,
service dogs can't be.
Yeah.
But like having Baloo, like I'm not gonna have any worries about walking in downtown Regina at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
If I've got a 150-pound Mastiff beside me, and not only a 150-pound Mastiff, but a dark brindle.
Yeah, exactly.
He's scary looking. He's scary looking. He's going to be scary.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not that we're training our dogs to attack anyone. But it's just like that extra layer of like, it's almost like a bubble, comfort. Like more of a bubble and protection. Yeah. Well, you know what? Thank you so much, Luke, for talking with us today. And it's really been really good to connect with you again. And I just, wanted to give you a really, really big thank you. And you're such a wealth of knowledge when it comes to all these things. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye. Well, that's all for today. Thank you for joining us. And another big thank you to our guest, Luke Wendover from Wendover Service Dogs. Why not send us some love? Hit that subscribe, follow, like, and share buttons. If you want to continue our conversation, please join us on our Facebook page or Patreon. We are at Mindful Paws Podcast everywhere. I've been your host, Laura Mudge, and it's been a pleasure talking to you today. You have been listening to the Mindful Paws Podcast, the most awesome podcast on the internet, spreading awareness about mental health and service dogs. Thanks for joining us.